Welcome to Luther's world of cryptids, ghosts, and the unexplained. If you're into strange things that fly above us in the skies, or creepy things that go bump in the night, then you have come to the right place. Much like cryptid creatures or folklore tales, they all have a home here, and so do you in Luther's world. Welcome to Lucky, Chapter 13. You're going to see today that we've scaled the show back a little bit. We're going to try out something a little bit here for a few shows and see how it goes. I had to scale back, I had to cut down a little bit of time, simply because of my personal time with AEW picking up, with coaching, with working on a new show I got coming out, Luther's World of Serial Killers. My time has been really limited, so I wasn't able to do the full show like we had been doing, but I did not want to cancel any shows, so we're just going to scale back. You're still going to get all the scary stories that you've come to enjoy. So let's onward with the program. I never thought it would happen to be real stories told by the people that had the encounters. Our first story is told by me about an apartment I used to have. I guess I shared with another roommate. And then we talked to a friend of the show, Charlie Ramone. He tells us a little UFO story. So my story goes back to an apartment I had. So this is an old apartment, and it used to be an old folks home back in the day for a long time. It's all brick. It's 2 levels. It was a pretty cool apartment, pretty big, very soundproof. It was really good. One thing, though, I've noticed from being there is the cable outlets there was really only one in the living room. So if you wanted to have any TV, whoever lived there all the time had to have their TV in the same spot. So I'm guessing everybody always had it right up against this one far wall, which also leads me to believe where my couch was to watch the TV, that's where everybody probably had their TV set up. So whenever I'd be up watching TV or playing video games or whatever, I would always get a whiff of cigarette smoke, and I don't smoke cigarettes, and no one around does. The windows would be closed because it'd be wintertime. There's nothing coming through a window. I even one time went outside on the patios to look around. No one was up. I looked in the back, I looked in the front. There was no one there. So it's not smoke. And even if there was somebody, like I said, the windows are shut. There's no way smoke's coming in. If you go to the back of the living room, there's no smoke. If you go in the kitchen, there's no smoke. It's only literally right around the couch area. Always at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like late at night. And it would only last for 20, 30 minutes, and then it'd be gone. But I always think that, back in the day, like almost everyone smoked. Maybe some old people that lived there, that's where they used to watch TV, and that's where they'd smoke. But it probably goes hand in hand with the story I have here. So the way I had my bed set up in my bedroom, if you sat up, you could watch TV. But you could see out through the door, and there's like a hallway coming from the living room, and it goes into the bathroom or into my room. If you hang a left, if you go straight, you hit the bathroom. You hang a left, you come in the room. So my girlfriend, we have the TV going, but she's sitting on the bed. She's on her laptop, and I'm reading a book. And I'm like reading the book, and I see sort of like over top to the side, I see like a guy go into the bathroom, and I put the book down, and I'm like, thinking to myself, what the hell? The door didn't open, the front door didn't open, there's no creaks, there's no noise. I was like, what is happening here? And I'm thinking, she's like, what's going on? But I didn't want to freak her out, so I was like, oh, nothing. There's nothing, so totally nothing. So I just bring my book back up, and I'm really just looking, because I'm trying to hear, hear something from the bathroom, but I don't hear anything. And then she's like, what's the matter? I was like, oh, nothing. Like, nothing. She's like, oh. And then, so I start reading again, and I still can't hear anything. I'm like, should I get up and go take a look at this point? But I don't hear anything. She's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I just didn't want to sound like an idiot or freak you out. And she goes, And I was like, I just think I thought I saw something. She goes, that guy walk in the bathroom, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm getting goosebumps right now telling it. And I was like, you saw that? And she's like, yeah. But she goes, I've seen him a bunch of times. Like one time when you left at like 4:30 in the morning, like at around 5, I woke up and I thought you were in the end of the bed, that you would come back in. And I look and it like wasn't you, and it was like a dark silhouette or whatever. And I just put the blanket over my head. And when I looked back later, it was gone. And I've seen it a bunch of times, but I didn't want to sound like a kook or something. I'm like, that's crazy. So of course I get up, go look in the bathroom, nothing. There's nothing there. I definitely saw something go in. She said I never told her about this. She just, 2 people saw the same thing without talking about it. So it's like, obviously that happened. So I guess we had a roommate living in the apartment with us.
Charlie Ramone here on Luther's World. And while I don't have the most exciting story, I still have something that's pretty cool. So here I was back in middle school, early 90s. And for me, it took about 2 hours to get to school. And I had to wake up super early in order to get to the school bus. So sky was always pitch black. You could always see the stars. So one morning I'm leaving, and for some reason I happen to look up. And when I do, I see something I don't recognize. It's floating right over the house. I can't hear anything. There's nothing else moving. But there's this large object. The front of it, presumably, was very wide. The tail end of it, very narrow. It has this large sphere in the center, almost like a half a sphere, almost like a light, something like that. But it's not really projecting any light. This thing is slowly hovering. And so I turn around, and I have to have somebody else witness this. I get my mother. I said, Ma, you gotta look at this thing. And she comes out, she sees it. It's just a helicopter. It's clearly not, but she's just trying to say that to get me to move on. I said, you really gotta take a look at this thing. She really comes out, she looks. Now she's stunned. She says, okay, that's not a helicopter. Can't hear anything. You would be able to hear a helicopter. It's silent, silent, silent morning. I get one of my neighbors as he's going to school. Pull him up. I said, you gotta see this thing. We have no explanation for it. Very slowly moving. Enough time goes by, I gotta get to the bus, I gotta get to school. So I get on the bus, I go, I'm telling everybody, there's this thing back there. So you guys gotta believe me, I saw a UFO. Everyone thinks me and my neighbor are absolutely crazy. So I go to the library, school library. And it was very rare that I went there. Never really read books. So when I went, the only thing I was gonna get were like horror books, books on movies, books on UFOs. So it's the first thing I went and grabbed, every book that I could look up on UFOs. And I start thumbing through these things, and I'm looking through all the UFOs that have been described by people. And sure enough, I get to this whole chapter where the first thing I see is this hand-drawn diagram of this ship. And it looks exactly like the ship that I saw. And this was described by thousands of people out at this mass gathering, concert, or some type of event in Germany. And they said the exact same thing I said, that this object merely hovered over for them for a brief period of time and then it was gone. They didn't describe any sound, nothing. The large light in the center, not really projecting anything, same shape, everything. Thousands of people drew that same object. And as you go on and on and on, there were so many times where I saw this same object being referred to all throughout Europe, all throughout the United States, all over the world. Still, I have no clue what the hell that was floating over my house. But I like to think it was a UFO.
If you have a story that you want to share on the show, film yourself telling your tale or write it out in full detail and email it to me at luthersworldmail@gmail.com, and we'll use it on a future chapter. Next up is the devil himself, Drexl. This is Defining the Unknown.
Greetings and salivations. I'm Drexl, homicidal artist and king of Northwest Hardcore, and I'm here to define the unknown on Luther's World. And today's word of the day is going to be ectoplasm. See, ectoplasm is from the Greek word ektos, meaning outside, and plasma, meaning something formed or molded. It's a term used in spiritualism to denote a substance or a spiritual energy that's exteriorized by a physical medium. It was first coined in 1894 by psychical researcher Charles Rechet. See, in spiritualism, ectoplasm is said to be formed by a physical medium when they go in that trance state. See, this material is excreted as a gauze-like substance from their orifices and all over the medium's body, and the spiritual entities are said to drape this substance over their non-physical body. It enables them to interact in the physical and the real universe. See, some accounts claim that ectoplasm, it begins clear and almost invisible, but then it starts to darken and becomes visible as the psychic energy becomes stronger. Still, other accounts state that in extreme cases, ectoplasm will develop a very strong odor. And according to some mediums, the ectoplasm cannot occur in light conditions. See, as the ectoplasmic substance would start to disintegrate. And although the term is widespread in popular culture, the physical existence of ectoplasm is really not accepted by science, and many purported examples were exposed as hoaxes, fashioned from cheesecloth, gauze, or other natural substances. See, many of the mediums back in the day, they'd use a method of they'd swallow and then regurgitate the cheesecloth or a textile product, usually smoothed with a potato starch, and in other cases, the ectoplasm was made from paper, cloth, and egg whites or butter muslin. So, if you see something strange in your neighborhood and it's kind of slimy, and it's probably not slime or an ectoplasm, it's probably snot, and with COVID, I would just stay away from it. So, Luther, back to you.
The paper trail story sent in by you, the viewers. Good day. I'm really enjoying your podcast so far, so I figured I should submit my first ghostly encounter. As mentioned below, my parents' house has been active for a long time, and we do have tons of stories. Hope you enjoy my story. My parents live out in what could be described as the middle of nowhere in Saskatchewan, that is up in Canada. As it is a little isolated and surrounded by farmers' fields. My parents' house is quite old. To my understanding, it was two old houses and the previous landlords combined them into one. It looks nice, but it's definitely showing age. Throughout the many years that my parents had lived there, 32 years to be exact, it has been known to have a couple residents who are not of this world. Many family and friends and family members have experienced unexplainable things, myself included. Here is the first ghostly encounter that I've ever had. It definitely wasn't the last. I was about 10 years old, and I was home alone. I just got off the school bus, and I was waiting for my brother and sister to get home as we went to different schools, and they used to get home about 15 minutes after me. I was watching TV and was wondering where they were, so I went walking into the kitchen and looked out the sliding door window. I looked and there was still no bus coming, so I turned around to go back into the living room. As I was turning, my parents have a glass cupboards. I saw my reflection and noticed that there was an old lady standing behind me, and she was just staring at me. I instantly froze and saw that she was a couple inches taller than me. She had small round glasses and a wool-looking veil over her head, and she was staring blankly at me. She was not showing any emotion. She was just staring at me. As I froze, I stared at her for a few seconds. Then I ran back to the living room. I sat on the couch staring at the TV and was too afraid to move or turn around to look back into the kitchen. I didn't hear anything but the TV. I sat there for the next hour until my parents got home. While sitting there, I was trying to rationalize what I saw. After a while, I eventually concluded that my mind was playing tricks on me, and I left it at that. Fast forward a few months, my cousin began living with us. And a few weeks after moving in, she was telling me and my family one evening that the night prior she was sleeping in the basement and she was woken up in the middle of the night. She said that she woke up because someone was saying her name and was shaking her leg. My cousin then said she opened her eyes and looked at the end of the bed and saw that there was an old lady standing there staring at her. My cousin then began to describe the exact same old lady that I saw. As I said at the beginning of this little story, my family members and family friends have experienced similar events at my parents' house. I've been a believer of spirits ever since. Thank you for reading this. Take care, Carrie. That is a great story, Carrie. If you have more, send them in. I will read them. This was great. Thank you.
Blue Collar Badass JD Drake here. And look, I don't know, Luther, these stories that you've given me start getting crazier every time I read them. But nonetheless, another story. Hi, Luther and or AEW Star reading this. That's me. I really enjoyed the series, and today I'd like to share my experience with a cryptid. What the hell is a cryptid? Anyways, when I was a child, my stepfamily owned about 100 acres in rural Iowa, just north of the Iowa-Missouri border. I would often spend weekends and holidays during the warmer months out on this property camping with the family. The land was very secluded, and the only way to get to our camping area was through an old cattle gate and then down a stretch of dirt road. Short of a small clearing they created for camping, the rest of the land consisted of untouched forest that was a part of a government nature preservation effort. Between the ages of 7 and 13, it became common for myself and any other children around to just disappear into the woods for a while, sometimes hours, completely alone. That makes a lot of sense. Occasionally, we would even hop fences and wind up on random gravel roads with no idea where the hell we were. But somehow, we always made it back to the campsite on our own. Say what you might about this as a parenting decision, but having the opportunity to get familiar with nature in this way provided me with many unique experiences and a few unexplainable ones. At the age of 12, being relatively comfortable and familiar in these woods, I decided to go out on a walk alone. About halfway through the relatively short hike, I began getting this uneasy feeling. I persisted forward, keeping an eye out just in case. As I got deeper into the woods, I noticed the forest becoming silent. It was then that I heard what sounded like a branch snapping. I quickly looked up into the canopy of trees around me, but saw nothing. Since the sound came from behind me, I continued forward a little further, then once again hearing a branch snapping, this time directly in line with me, only to look up and see nothing again. I continued a bit further, my eyes darting all over the place, and then I see it. It stopped me dead in my tracks. Up in the trees directly in front of me is the hairy humanoid figure with long arms and legs. It had a midsection just slightly larger than my average 12-year-old frame. It had brown hair in its silhouette, but because of the way the sun hit the canopy on the trees behind it, I couldn't clearly make out its face. I stared at it for quite a few minutes, no longer feeling uneasy, nor did I feel threatened. I had the feeling that as long as I didn't go any further, there wouldn't be any problems. After our brief staring match, I decided to start heading back to the campsite. I looked behind me a few times but saw nothing. Trying to make sense of it, I began to wonder if a monkey had escaped from the zoo or something. I got back to the campsite without any problems and immediately asked my mom if she had heard anything about a monkey on the loose. She looked at me like I was crazy, of course, as there wasn't a zoo for hundreds of miles. They made a couple Bigfoot jokes, and then we moved on with our night. I don't think I'll ever know exactly what that was, but it makes me wonder what could be lurking out there in the areas of the world still untouched by man. All the best, Corey. So, as wild as that is, you and I have a similar experience. Look up Nobby in Kaiser, North Carolina. Apparently there's a Sasquatch around my area too. Google is your friend. Be sure to check it out.
I'm Kat Spencer, and I'm here to read Luther's fan mail. I saw a cigar-shaped UFO when I was a kid. After that, I was always looking, and I have seen a lot of what you would call UFOs. One was a big yellow light moving only in the clouds, a green and silver ball, and one was so big it looked to be in the formation of a pyramid. And I live in Puerto Rico. I saw a few things like a tiny ball of light in my house, and I can hear the red light saying, "I am going to get her with me." I freak and I wake up my wife. She saw it too. I tell these crazy things and people call me crazy. From Luis.
Thank you to all my readers and guests, and most importantly, thank you to you, the viewers. If you like the show, tell people about us. Share it, like it, subscribe. And until next time, let the chaos run strong and stay